What's it mean when somebody says you're so immature? Well, today I want to talk about 5 signs of emotional immaturity. So we've all heard people tease each other with, you're so immature, you act just like a kid, you've never grown up, and anything along that line. Well, today let's look at that. Let's look at what immaturity is all about. But today I just chose 5 that I think are fairly common. We all do them to a degree. I know I certainly have and do. And we have to catch ourselves on it, because if not, we don't really grow up. We can stay stuck. And so when we're willing to look at what's holding us back in life, in this case, emotional immaturity, it can help us grow. So let's have a look. So the first one I came up with is you cave, you give in about important things in your life. This can range from anything to not maintaining healthy boundaries with people, to not expressing yourself, not taking a risk and voicing an opinion or a thought that you know perhaps is going to be unpopular, not advocating for yourself, standing up for yourself. Are you being treated like a doormat by somebody? Or it could be politically. You are not voicing your opinion about what's going on in the world, perhaps. Or it could range all the way down to the sibling that walks in on you in your room. They didn't knock, they just walked in. They came in to grab something out of your closet. This is not their space, it's your space, but you just let them get away with it. So anytime you find yourself restricting your voice, caving, giving in on something that's important to you. And you know when you do it because you have that uncomfortable feeling. You could be a combination of angry, disappointed, feeling bitter, envious of their entitlement, whatever it is, all at once. That all ties into caving in on something that's important to you. People who are mature in their life don't allow that to happen so much. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to win everything, if we want to use that term win, and it's not really about winning or losing, because if you've voiced your opinion and stood up for yourself and made there be firm boundaries where you need to have them, and followed through on a plan of action that's important to you, expressed something that was really hard for you to get out, if you've done that and the person has rejected you, turned away from you, kept on doing what they're doing, maybe argued back, whatever it is, that doesn't matter. How they react and what you can control or not control in your life is not really the issue here, because there's going to be many times when you'll have a healthy boundary and express your voice about something and it will be completely ignored. So that's not the point as to how somebody deals with it, or if somebody you voted for in the presidential contest doesn't win, it doesn't mean you should not have voted. No, that has nothing to do with it. It's about you following through on voicing and sharing what's important to you and standing up for yourself regardless of what the outcome is. Number 2 is you're unwilling to resolve conflict and maybe even avoid conflict. So if you're running from conflict, if there's something uncomfortable, if there's a conversation you need to have, if you need to have a serious talk with the parent about why you need to not have contact with them anymore, if you need to tell a significant other, a husband or wife, why their relationship is going to be over, if you need to tell a child why they need to move out of the home, but you know it's going to get messy. There's going to be an argument probably. You know what this person is like. You know how they fly off the handle. You know they have a temper. Again, with like what I just mentioned a second ago, that does not matter. How they react is their own business. If they get physical with you, then obviously you're going to have to dial 911 and call the police. So it's not so much about their reactions. It's that you're voicing and stepping in to resolve conflict. That can involve negotiating, compromising, hearing the other person out, and also making sure you get your point out, finding that middle ground. It takes a while to practice this if you've never done it in your life. Kids that have been abused as children don't have any practice in this whatsoever sometimes. So you have to learn how to work with conflict, because it's always going to be there in all of our lives. And how do you work through that without running away? Because a lot of people will run away. I know I used to run away years ago. I didn't want to deal with it. Are you joking? Just get me out of here. So you begin to be aware of how it builds confidence to wade into things, tolerate the discomfort. Sometimes you may have to agree to disagree. Number 3 is you don't want to risk vulnerability. Being vulnerable means we have to show our soft underbelly. We have to talk about and share feelings that we'd rather hide. Because in general, in society, the bully is rewarded. The The tough guy is rewarded. Especially for men growing up, there's this role that they think they need to be in about they gotta be rigid. It's how they present themselves. This is how I was conditioned from my father and my grandfather. Well, if you're aware that something has just been conditioned in you and it's not really who you are necessarily, try to be aware of and dismiss some of the conditioning. Because conditioning is more of a facade, right? You're following what somebody else has done. You're just sort of trailing somebody behind and saying, well, they seem to act this way. This is what they told me to do. Well, because they did this, I better do it. That's not going to be helpful in our adult life, especially when it comes to this topic about being vulnerable and also ignoring what society says vulnerability versus strength is all about. Really, the strongest thing is address and work with what we consider to be the weakest link inside of us. The weakest link is often our strongest point. When we're willing to tell somebody we care about them, when we're willing to say, that really hurt me, you really hurt my feelings, let's talk about this. Which it's there anyhow, right? I mean, you can try to ignore it or minimize it or avoid it, but it ain't going anywhere, so you might as well begin to work with it. And working with it means we share it. We risk vulnerability. So when we're vulnerable and we open up and we share the things we'd rather hide, not only is it healthy for us in the long run, of course, but it actually draws people to us because they can relate and connect with the part of them that's human in the same way that you're human. Number 4, they prefer to stay in denial and they don't look at or want to know the benefits of personal growth. So in other words, let's say somebody's an alcoholic, or let's say somebody overeats after they have a conflict at work, or for kids who have been abused and now they're very quiet as adults. Maybe they're in their early 20s and they're aware they're not speaking up. They're not sharing their opinions. Their friends, family members tell them to. And the person realizes, yeah, I have it all in here, but I'm not sharing it. Well, there's hundreds of examples similar to what I just mentioned, is when we have an idea that there's something going on we need to deal with, but we would rather stay in denial because we simply don't want to tolerate uncomfortable feelings. Because really, that's the bottom line of all of this. I mean, we don't want to face a feeling that makes us uncomfortable, that is hard to hold, like something like shame. It's hard to hold. It's like, oh, you just want it to go away. But shame, speaking of just one feeling right now, is not going to kill us. It's a feeling that passes through us, just like anger will pass through us. And so when we can come out of denial and just say to ourselves, or hopefully somebody else too, you know, I have a problem with this. I'm really struggling with this. I find that it's inhibiting me in life. It's preventing me from really blossoming. I'm definitely not reaching my potential because of A, B, or C. So if we know that, and we're still choosing to stay in a state of denial, therefore what that really means is we're not going to deal with it, then that is such a sign of emotional immaturity. Failure can be wonderful. We're here to learn. That's why we come to this planet. That's my opinion. We come to learn and grow. And we learn through trial and error. We learn through failure. It can be wonderful. Failure can be the greatest motivation for something, and it also helps us sort through things. Let's say you're going to college or you're getting your bachelor's degree. You have no idea what you want to major in. You have a choice of 5 things that sort of interest you. Well, how are you going to figure that out? Well, you have to go through the process of perhaps hating 4 of them, or maybe stumbling through and failing through 4 of them, but there's that one that seems to work for you. You really click with it. It seems to come a lot more easy. Well, there's your answer, but you wouldn't have known it unless you flubbed up and perhaps failed at the other 4. So failure can help mold us in wonderful ways. There's just some people that excel at some things and are horrible at other things. And then the people over here also excel at some things and they're horrible at other things. I mean, we all have that in us. We have some things we're good at, some things we're not. Some people try to take that and make it be very personal, and therefore it gives them a reason to hide in their mind at least, and to pull back from life because God forbid I fail at something. And how that perpetuates itself over time is people try to stay in denial, even though it's really an issue and they know it, but they go out of their way to try to push it away or at least minimize it. Big red flag if you're doing that. And my last sign that I chose for emotional immaturity ties in a way to what I just mentioned. It's playing the victim. This is a bit more developed than what I just mentioned for number 4. Playing the victim can permeate a whole person's identity. It's how they approach life. In number 4, which I just mentioned, it could be more about a particular issue, But playing the victim that I'm talking about now is where we take it on as a role. We can complain about anything. Everything is somebody else's fault, not ours. Life in general just sucks. There's a very negative outlook or viewpoint about nearly everything. And if there's any issue at all, it's not about them. They can blame A, B, C, D, and E, and all the way to Z if they need to simply stay in victim mentality. And victim mentality does nothing more than create a safe place for somebody to hide from life. It's a way to not take something on because God forbid I have to struggle with uncomfortable feelings, perhaps fail. That's why I brought up failure earlier, and step out of their comfort zone. You've got to be willing to step out of your comfort zone in life. That's what's required to become an adult. So you need to challenge yourself, catch yourself when you're blaming society or others or a situation. Instead of looking externally, look internally as to what you can learn, how you can benefit or grow from what just happened, how it can make you a better person, and perhaps what you'll do different next time. So it's all a positive as opposed to being a negative. So these are the 5 that I came up with. I know there's many more. Please leave in the comment section any that you'd perhaps like to add. Who knows, if I get a bunch of suggestions, maybe I'll do another video about it. Please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.